Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, to wherever in the world you are. So today we have a webinar in support of our members in the Pacific, focusing on sustainability in the Pacific. I am Alethea. I'm the head of member engagement, and I'm very honored to be your host for today. So let me tell you a little bit about the webinar and what's going to happen today. The demand for sustainability by travelers is very well known. And today we're going to have Booking.com to share with us a little bit about that from their most recent report. However, delivering sustainability is still a challenge in many parts of the world. What are the best practices and rewards that key opinion leaders in the Pacific, such as Tahiti and Palau, can vouch for based on their sustainable journeys so far? And with the aim of being able to prove the business case for sustainability in the Pacific, today we're going to do a deep dive into conversations around tourism destination risk management for small island destinations, topics like coral bleaching, rising sea levels, the blue economy, and more. So I'm very excited for today's webinar and what we have in store for us today. And I also wanted to give a huge shout out to our sponsor of today's webinar, the Thailand Convention and Exhibition Bureau, also known as TCEP. So they have sponsored this webinar in support of PATA members in the Pacific. Thank you very much, TCEP, for your support. Now, before we begin, just a few housekeeping rules. Please do ask any questions that you might have in the Q&A function and not in the chat function. The chat function is there for you to introduce yourselves to each other and have conversations with other webinar attendees and more. But any questions in the chat function might get lost. So please do put your questions in the Q&A function and we'll get around to it. Today's agenda for the webinar is very simple. We are going to have 3 presentations of 10 minutes each from our following speakers. First, we're going to have Booking.com give us an overview about the latest trends and practices that travelers are demanding for. And then we're going to have Palau Visitors Authority give a presentation and Tahiti Tourism give the next presentation about case studies and best practices in sustainability. This is going to be followed by a 20-minute panel discussion that is moderated by PATA, and we will close the webinar with a closing keynote speech. So the total duration of today's webinar will be 1 hour and 15 minutes long. So without further ado, I do want to welcome our first speaker on stage. Mr. Yang Lee is the Head of Public Affairs, APAC, for Booking.com. Prior to joining Booking.com, Yang actually held senior roles in public affairs and public policy at Foodpanda and Jewel Labs. And before that, Yang held a number of roles in public affairs advisory firms such as APCO Worldwide and Asia Group Advisors to support global clients in government relations. So Yang, thank you very much for being here with us today. I invite you to share your screen and get started.
Absolutely, thank you. Let me share my screen. Second here. All right. Going. All right. Can everybody see my screen now?
Looks perfect. Take it away.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Well, welcome to this webinar, and thank you very much to PATA. For inviting me today to talk about what Booking.com is doing in the sphere of sustainability in the Asia Pacific. And let me begin. I think perhaps many of those in the audience have used Booking.com before, have heard of Booking.com before, and may have read our mission statement somewhere on the website. But just for me to share, officially what our mission is our mission is to make it easier for everyone to experience the world. And this particular mission actually slightly changed, I think, during COVID in particular, when we saw ecologies, flora and fauna recover significantly as a result of a lack of tourism. And I think as a company, we realized that we needed to enlarge our mission parameters to also think about how we can make sure we play our part in ensuring that there is a world worth experiencing. So that officially, since COVID has actually gone away now, been a primary focus of the company. And when we talk about sustainability, there's three main pillars that we focus on. One is, how do we help and support our destinations to be more sustainable? How can we as a company focus on not adversely impacting the environment? And how can we nudge travelers to make more sustainable choices? And within that framework of what are we doing as a company? We unveiled our climate action plan in 2022 with a focus to achieve net zero by 2040 through a combination of mitigation, offsetting, and reuse, particularly of our carbon emissions, our built environment, and our employee travel. Beyond that, we've also introduced climate change awareness training within the company. This is a requirement for all employees to better understand A, what is climate change, and B, what is the company doing about it, and C, how are we as a company impacting the environment as it currently stands. And a second component, obviously, is how do we nudge consumers? And one of the things that we do every year, and now that it's in its official 8th year, is we do a sustainable travel study. It surveys more than 33,000 travelers across the world, 35 different countries. And I just also want to be clear that the individuals we survey is not only Booking.com travelers, but any traveler that responds to the survey request. And this is in its 8th year running, and actually we've had some very interesting results, I think, this year in particular. One of those things that is very interesting is the amount and proportion of people who believe that we need to act sooner rather than later to make more sustainable choices has gone up from 2022. 66% indicated this last year in our survey. It's risen to 74%. One of the good things that I think for the Asia Pacific region is that you can see a good amount of the highest proportion of travelers who feel this way are actually in Asia. India, Philippines, and Vietnam, making the 4 highest origin countries of those that we've surveyed. So this is actually a good news for Asia Pacific. And interestingly enough, in Europe, they made up some of the lowest proportion of folks who felt this way. And beyond that, I think one of the most striking outputs from the survey this year in particular is the rising cost of living. I think despite sort of 76% of travelers wanting to travel more sustainably, the same percentage also felt that rising cost of living will affect those plans. And a very interesting kind of fact that arose from this particular aspect of the survey is they actually want tips and suggestions how to travel sustainably on a budget. I think there is a strong perception, almost 50% believe that sustainable travel options are too expensive. And I think, this is because in some part due to the fact that luxury hotels, sort of very well-funded, big budgeted tourism destinations highlight all the sustainability practices they put into place. Whereas the smaller, more budget-friendly options are really not marketing themselves as well or as much. So there is this perception that the more expensive travel destinations and options are doing more. And therefore, if you're on a budget, likely you're not going to be choosing the sustainable options. Now, of course, we've got to keep in mind that's a perception. Whether that is, in fact, actually what's happening on the ground, you'll see later, is quite different. Beyond that, I think, another interesting fact is that travelers want more sustainable options. And many believe that there are not enough. And now this is either due to the fact that they cannot find it, don't know where to go to find it, or that the options that are sustainable are not very visible. And separate from, just looking for sustainable options, A great deal of our survey respondents said that they would actually want more local experiences rather than staying at perhaps the big global hotels. They would want to stay in a more local hotel accommodation. And coincidentally, following the theme that we had brought up earlier about cost consciousness, the same survey travelers want more economic incentives. You can see the amount surveyed that want economic incentives has gone up significantly compared to our 2022 surveyed figures. So, but I want to, talk a little bit about this particular point of economic incentives, right? I don't always think that this figure is something that will remain the same throughout the years, right? As we all know, there are a lot of global events this year and last year that have made costs go up. And should costs go down, I would imagine that this figure could change. So I think this particular cost question is probably something that is acute rather than consistent throughout the years. And another factor that I think is a good thing, and this is something that I think all destinations and particularly hotel partners should be encouraged about, is that a lot of customers are interested to learn what partners and hotels are doing on the sustainability front. They want to search for options that have sustainable certifications. They do feel better about staying in an accommodation that has some sustainable certification. And so I think, when you ask companies whether they should or want to invest in sustainable practices or investments, I think the answer is definitely a yes. Now, whether this translates into actual more incremental bookings and profit, that is a different question. So, how are we as Booking.com introducing sustainability practices for our consumers and for our partners? So I don't know if any of you have used this particular feature. We have something called the Travel Sustainable Program, or better known as the Travel Sustainable Badge. Maybe you guys have seen this badge on the lower left corner, but essentially it is a filterable option you have on the app, desktop, and all other ways which you can use Booking.com to filter for properties that have the badge. The badge itself has 32 different impact assessment criteria, focusing on 5 different focuses. So on the top, you can see that. Waste, water, energy, and greenhouse gases, protecting nature and supporting local communities. And when you do put your mouse or click on the Travel Sustainable Badge, you'll actually be able to pull out a menu like this box on the right side that actually highlights all the things this particular property is doing on the sustainability front. So if if you're a traveler that's conscious or you care about what a property is doing, this is actually now a product feature you can use to find out what properties are doing on Booking.com. And as I mentioned, 32 different impactful practices in which we use to assess. Now we have the original program started in 2021 during the height of COVID. And from that point of starting in November 2021 until today, we have about 500,000 properties that have the badge. And so now, 500,000 properties might sound like a lot, but actually within the universe of properties that we have and listings, just to give you an idea, we have 28 million listings on Booking.com. So 500,000 is still not a huge amount, right? And so still we have a lot of work to do to get properties to sort of submit and highlight what they're doing. And I also kind of want to talk about the development of product features like this, right? A lot of people may think, despite having something as simple as a badge on the front end, it might be very easy to do. But actually, to get consumers to notice the badge, make choices, or even click on the badge, took a lot of A/B testing. So we've now grown the badge to include different levels. So, hotels that have done more will actually be recognized to do more. So we have 3 different levels, and hotels that have done everything they could possibly do will have 3 leaves, as opposed to what when we started the program, it had only 1 leaf. And now the program has grown to also include rental car filters, to look for greener taxi options, and also to pay for things like public transport. So you'll be able to choose, different options that suit perhaps your own sustainability choices. And this is something that we really try to empower the consumer, who want to know and learn about what different travel and booking options they have from a booking service like us. And furthermore, to help consumers with that information, we partnered with a Norwegian company called Choose to display the carbon emissions data for accommodations, for flights, and for rental cars. So in the future, when you go and book a flight on Kayak or Booking.com, which is under the Booking Holdings umbrella, you will be able to filter based on the carbon emissions of a particular flight. Should that be something that is something you want to filter through when you make those choices. And from the flip side, we talked about consumer. What about the partners that work with us, the hotel partners, right? I think one of the complexities of travel is not only the fact that you have to nudge consumers and you have to educate consumers, but how can we actually educate the suppliers, right? Your destinations, your tour operators, your hotels. So this is a hospitality handbook focused on sustainability that we've introduced within our partner hubs, or the extranet, as we call it, where we basically try to help educate all of our accommodation partners on how they can showcase their sustainable investments. And if they're not sure, what sustainable investments to make, we actually also educate them on what are the impacts of the different sustainable investments that they could make. So it's both. It's both educating partners who are not sure about what investments to make, but it's also about helping partners who have made those investments actually share those with us so that it can be shared with the customers. And beyond just doing, sort of the virtual, as a company, we've also, this is just to show you kind of a snapshot of what we've done in India and South Asia, is we actually try to bring partners together to actively talk about all the different sustainability practices that they could be doing, and maybe perhaps that they didn't know about, that could be displayed on the front end through Booking.com. So this is an active effort we're doing across the world. This is just a snapshot of the different cities that we've actually done workshops with the different partners that are in those cities that we work with. So moving forward, what are some potential future trends that we can look forward to in the travel sphere following some of the results we just showed earlier? One thing that I think is becoming apparent in the survey results is a lot of customers, or a lot of our survey respondents, have indicated that they want to travel outside of the peak season. And I know that for destination managers, and we have some on the panel today, sort of peak season, low season management is probably one of the more difficult things to control. Why? Because peak season, you've got to hire more staff, you have over tourism, you have more damage to the ecology. And low season, you have to, let the staff go, or you have to keep staff and keep costs high. And you have these very strong peaks and valleys, due to the fact that there's peak season and low season. So it's a good sign, I think, that more travelers are looking to travel outside of the peak season. We also see that there's more consciousness surrounding buying local, and customers and survey respondents who look to plan their travel around travel options which are more sustainable, such as walking or biking or mass transit. Another trend that we see is there is a desire to want to ensure that the money that they're spending in destinations actually go back to the local environment. So this is a theme that we've seen arise time and again, is how is this money that I'm spending benefiting the local community? And encouragingly, again, in Asia, we're seeing a strong disposition for this particular, what we call regenerative travel. And the respondents, as you can see, are particularly high in Vietnam, Indonesia, and Thailand. So again, this is actually a really good trend. How can destinations and hotel partners showcase customers' spend is benefiting the local community? So again, this is a good trend, and I think a good food for thought for some of our partners. And with that, I conclude my presentation. I look forward to addressing questions and comments about some of the data that I presented today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yang, for the insightful presentation. I really enjoyed listening to it and all the different ways that we can learn about the properties on Booking.com, and especially for travelers to find these properties that we want to find. So thank you. Next up, we have Kadoi Ruluked, Managing Director of Palau Visitors Authority. Kadoi has also been a board member of Protected Area Network Fund and a committee member of the Temporary Workforce Coordinating Committee for Pandemic Reemployment Program that PVA has been administering since May 2020. Mr. Ruluked is also very passionate about bringing communities to the tourism industry, especially to the stakeholders in the industry, and for putting Palau on the global platform as a preferred tourist destination. So, Mr. Kadoi, welcome on stage. And
thank you, Alicia. Thank you. And before I start my presentation, I would like to take the opportunity to thank Para for giving us this opportunity, for giving PVA, represents Palau, to have a panel discussion and also share our challenges in sustainability in the Pacific. So with that, let me share my screen.
okay, looks good to go.
We're good to go. Okay. Before I start, I want to tell Yang, thank you for a very insightful Booking.com presentation. We're one of Booking.com customers. We use it a lot when we travel. So thank you. So what are the sustainability challenges in Palau? So I want to bring back Palau to 2011. So in 2011, Palau recorded its highest tourism arrival numbers. Pre-2011, we had about 68,000 to about 88,000 visitors. In 2011, we hit 111,000 visitors. That's the highest number we had in 2011. But fast forward to 2014, 2015, we had mass tourism. We experienced an influx of tourists from Macau and Hong Kong. During that time, duration of the year 2014 to 15, we had about 4 charter flights operating from Macau and Hong Kong to Palau. Now, what that translates to is we had over 168,000 in 2014. Now, that was a lot for Palau to manage. So as you can see, we had overcrowding, and that equals to mass tourism, put a strain on our local infrastructure and resources, and also included issues such as overcrowding of the beaches and other tourist attractions. So our government put out a moratorium on the charter flights. So the moratorium actually was a 50% reduction of charter flights. So if an air carrier was operating 4 flights a week, it was reduced to 2. Now, if you were operating 3 flights, it was reduced to 1. So without the charter flights, what happened is we experienced a lot of environmental impacts. When we talk about environmental impacts, it's habitat destruction, mainly the mangrove areas, and also the land-based tourist attractions. They were damaged due to overcrowding. And that had a huge impact on the soil and the environment because some of our cultural and historical sites are protected, but there's entry of tourists. But then again, with mass tourism, there was overcrowding on certain sites that are only applicable to lower groups of travelers. So what our Palau government did is we came up with the Palau Pledge. The Palau Pledge is simply a pledge that each tourist that enters Palau have to sign on their passport. They get a stamp on their passport and they have to sign it. And the pledge was written by children of Palau to really make it a point to protect the environment for Palauans and future generations. And Palau is the first nation on earth to change its immigration law to reflect this. How has our community been able to implement sustainability? As you can see on my slide, a lot of state government stakeholders, especially Kora State Government, who is the biggest stakeholder in Palau, they manage the Southern Lagoon. When I say the Southern Lagoon, that's all the rock islands, the famous Jellyfish Lake, Milky Way, and it's a World UNESCO Heritage Site. So what we did is we started working with the state governments and really supporting green initiatives. When we talk about green initiatives, we did a lot of tree planting, coral planting, and cleanup events. So if you can see, Kora State Government on the top left, they did a challenge called Scoop and Go, where they challenged each of the government agencies and even the tour operators to go out and for the whole day and just do trash pickup on the water, on the beaches. And that was proven to be a very successful initiative. We also work with a lot of state governments. Palau has 16 states. So PVA initiated coral planting and clam planting. So if you can see, we work with the community members to do coral and clam planting. That's important because of the overcrowding. It had an adverse effect on the marine environment. And plus, we're doing coral planting and clam planting because not only that, we also have climate change issues. So by replanting corals and clam, we can open up new sites for tourism so we can address the overcrowding issues. Now, if you look at the bottom right and the middle picture, we were doing a lot of beach cleanups. So Palau, if you know Palau, geographically, we're very susceptible to weather changes and climate change. So a lot of marine debris actually float and then come ashore, and they affect the beaches and the marine life and even the community staying in those states. So what we did, another initiative is we used the time during 2020 when we were affected by COVID. We went out and worked with a lot of state governments to clean up their beaches. So, and not only cleaning up the beaches, we also work with them to keep track of the marine debris. We did some research and surveys on where they came from. We also worked with the Kora State and the national government to segregate the trash, weigh them, and then kept those records. So I'm happy to share that that program is still happening in some of the state. It was started in 2020, but throughout the years and even now, currently they are still doing coastal cleanup and beach cleanups. We also did a lot of tree planting. Climate change issue has affected a lot of the upland areas or in the rural areas in Palau. So with that, we're combating climate change by working with the state and small groups of men and women to do a lot of tree planting, especially coconut. Coconut is very important because it helps the soil and keeps the soil intact when there's climate change or rainwater or disruptions to the erosion. Other sustainability practices we've been promoting is cleanup events. So we had a lot of cleanups in the southern parts of Palau. So if you can see on my slide, those are the data. So those data are very important because we want to teach the community that because of this marine debris, these are the result of the environment being degraded, and also the marine animals are being affected by it. And I'm glad to share that the school has implemented programs, whereas every other month they would go out and clean up their beaches. So we need to start educating our children. We start from the school, and then we can work with them throughout the community. By supporting green initiatives, we also did a lot of partnership with national organizations. If you can see on the top right, we did a huge program. It's called Invest in Your Community, and it's a mangrove cleanup. Now, mangroves are very important to Palau's environment. They actually are the filters of our marine areas. So we partner with Palau International Coral Reef Center, Palau Conservation Society, the Friends of the Palau National Marine Sanctuary, and the Palau Plits, and to name other government agencies. How do PVA work with the state and community to implement sustainability? So you can see our office spearheads a lot of activities throughout the year. One of our biggest activities is called the Green Fair, where we work with a lot of women organizations, some of the state and the community, to come up with the annual plant contest. We also do a lot of weavings, and we also did this year upcycling, where we take whatever we use at the home when you're not using it anymore, we turn it into a product. So doing that, we also have a really big project. It's called the Agricultural Support Center, where the government and also PVA with other partners, we're implementing a program where we produce seedlings of taro corms, and we give them to the women organizations for them to plant, and then they resell it back to the center. Now the center acts as a processing facility, and then we're going to be producing taro flour. Now that's a first for Palau. So why that's very important is we're working with a lot of women groups in those affected areas that I mentioned before because of climate change. We are helping them to plant on upland locations. And for that is to really help them regain the small income that they lost during COVID. So I'm happy to share about that. In June of this year, we're going to open the Agricultural Support Center. We're going to be producing taro flour in the hopes of being able to produce it for export as a marketing product, and also to help the livelihoods of the women in the communities. We're also supporting a lot of local farmers that are in aquaculture and on land farming. So we tend to buy a lot of their produce and fish. We also work with them to bring them to the consumer, bring them to the wholesalers, like farm to table, sea to table. So PVA has been working a lot with that. Now, why is that important? Because we can reduce the carbon footprint by using transportation and support the local economy. We also have a very popular event. It's called the Night Market, so where we tend to use a lot of the women organizations, the young men associations of the many states that I mentioned earlier. So what we do is we buy their product, whether it's arts and crafts, produce, whether it's vegetables, fish, and then we sell it at the night market. And the night market is usually for locals, but we're getting a lot of tourists. And what we do at the night market, we tend to have different themes that are geared toward sustainable practices. So if you can see, we have a couple of screenshots of the night market themes. Like the root of it all, we were promoting the taro production center. And prior to that, in 2021, we hosted our Oceans Conference. And now that was a very big event for Palau. And we incorporated the theme for the night market, it's Night at the Ocean. And we were able to secure a lot of speakers who talk about marine environment. We also helped a lot of local farmers and a lot of fishermen to come and showcase their catch. And hopefully in the event, they'll earn some income to help them in their livelihood and their communities. These are a couple of programs that I was talking about. Preserve, conserve, and practice. Now in 2020, our government put out a ban on single-use plastics. So a lot of stores in Palau and even at the night market, we've been encouraging our patrons to use reusable bags instead of single-use plastic. So I was talking earlier about upcycling. So if you can see the photo in the middle, it's, I know us Pacific Islanders, we love our rice. So we working with a tailor here who specializes in using discarded rice sacks and turn them into reusable bags that you can use to shop at the stores. You can use them to the night market. And one of the incentives at the night market is when you use your recycled bag, you get a small percentage off of anything that you buy at the night market. So we've been spearheading that program. Not only that, Palau Visitors Authority is a member of the Palau Chamber of Commerce. So we partnered with a lot of the chamber members and really helped them be the advocate of letting their customers, when they shop, to use their reusable bags. Another big initiative that we're working is I mentioned that we had a lot of beach cleanup. Now, when we do beach cleanups, there's a lot of marine debris, and a huge majority of them are plastic bottles and glass bottles. So if you can see, there's a center here that PVA is working with. It's called the Quarter State Government Solid Waste Management. So a lot of the marine debris that we get from the coastal cleanups, we bring it to the processing facility and they turn them into jewelry, glass jewelry, or glass blown objects like the blue marlin. Now, in return, PBA helps promote this. So they're producing the product and we're bringing them to the trade shows or the events that we attend outside of Palau. And this is a very important initiative because it's also teaching the community on how to segregate their trash receptacles. And I think the program has been going on for about 4 years and it's been very successful. Now the center itself are getting a lot of customers who are buying the jewelry, the glass blown objects. There's even jellyfish lake jellyfish that they've blown up into glass or product. As you can see, this young lady on the screen is one of a young person who stays in one of the northern states of Palau, who have turned upcycling into a business. It's called Sincerely Yours. She collects all the glass and the plastic bottles that was ashore on her state. She turned them into like earrings, bracelets, rings, and we've helped her. We've developed a video about her product and why she's so passionate about it. And I'm happy to share that her business has blown up. She's getting a lot of customers, return customers, and even shipping it out. But the reason why we highlight her is she's a young entrepreneur, but she loves her community and she's trying her best to contribute by turning whatever is washed ashore into a product. So in a way, she's giving back to the community. Another important policy and regulations that the Palau government and PVA has done is we've produced our Responsible Tourism Education Act. That's a legislation that was passed to really educate and raise awareness with the tour operators and accommodation providers, and to really use sustainable practices when they conduct tours. They, instead of using plastic materials to contain customers' lunch or beverage, they're using bento boxes that are more sustainable. You can reuse them multiple times. And in 2020, our former president, passed the law to ban single-use plastic, and that's why a lot of operators are following the Responsible Tourism Education Act to really implement that. Another important policy that we've done is the Responsible Tourism Policy Framework, which is now is being implemented and used by all the business industry and the players in Palau. And that's very important because it contains all the do's and don'ts of being a tour company, being a hotel provider. And it's just really about educating yourself, raising awareness within your business to how to cater to the customers and how to really implement sustainability in your business places. Now, what is PVA's role in all of this? PVA's role is really to encourage and bolster sustainable tourism by sharing or educating current sustainable initiatives and potential ones. For our office, we've successfully launched programs such as the WAVE, where we call it Welcome All Visitors Enthusiastically. We've started a Palau Kids Summer Camp and the Night Market. Those are very important programs because we are working with a lot of the industry people in Palau to implement this. WAVE is really about teaching our young generations to welcome visitors. But when we welcome visitors, we want to show them what Palau is. And in doing so, we are promoting sustainability because there will be our voice and ambassadors of really relaying what we've done, like the pledge, upcycling and recycling. So we're using them as our ambassadors to really hone in on the visitors and make them part of it. And we're also working with an agency called the Bureau of Tourism to develop a new set of sustainable programs, sustainability programs geared toward tourism. And one of our successful programs is called the AliPass program, where we're working with 12 states as of now to develop products and tours using natural resources, using the community people, and to create experiential tours for community-based tourism. And I'm happy to say that PVA won Community-Based Tourism Award in 2019 to the Para Gold Awards. And that program we started is still in operation until today. In fact, after COVID, we restarted all our AliPass program successfully, and we've been getting a lot of visitors to the sites, where the site is, whether it's a traditional meeting house or it's a historical site, and then all the community members are the one conducting the tours, and they're using all sustainable products, no plastic use, and they're using what's grown in the state, what's fished in the state. So it's more of the farm to table, sea to table concept. And we've woven into a whole community holistic approach to welcoming our visitors to our many states. And with that, I would like to close with our greeting, Masulang. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Kadoi, for that lovely presentation. I think in particular, I really love being able to see such concrete examples of initiatives done hand in hand with the communities to combat climate change. And you're doing such good work in actively educating the next generation and supporting them to becoming ambassadors for the environment of Palau. That was such a lovely presentation. Thank you so much. Next up, we have Jean-Marc Mocellin, the CEO of Tahiti Tourism. Jean-Marc has a long career in tourism, spanning international deluxe hotel brands all over the world, from Europe, Africa, Fiji, and New Caledonia. He's also no stranger to associations, where he was the co-president of the Hotel Association in Tahiti, dealing with successive governments, tourism bodies, trade unions, and actively involved in tourism strategies. In May 2020, at the peak of the COVID crisis, he returned to Tahiti to take up the role of CEO at Tahiti Tourism. So Jean-Marc, I invite you to come on stage, turn on your camera, unmute yourself, and share your screen.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to put my screen on. Here we are. Thank you. Thank you very much.
We can see you now.
Right. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about the islands of Tahiti sustainable strategy. I will try to do it in 10 minutes, which is quite a challenge. So let me share my screen. Here we are. All right. So it actually all started with our 5 years tourism roadmap, which was constructed together with the population and the tourism stakeholders, the island municipalities and the government, in a very collaborative approach, because we did all, of course, meetings on sites, but we also had a dedicated website where everyone could join, voice their concern, their views, etc. And what came out of this consultancy was, which actually was voted by our local parliament late last year, was a strong concern against mass tourism and the desire for an inclusive and sustainable approach to tourism development that values quality over quantity, sort of a reasonable growth, which is respectful on the environment and its community. So the islands of Tahiti wants to position itself as a leading destination for slow tourism, where people, culture, and the nature, of course, are in the heart of the travel experience. As you can see, the main objective to reach by 2027, it's a 5-year plan, are rather reasonable. And like usual big government announcements, they are more or less between 15 to 20% growth in economic benefits, number of jobs, number of accommodation, number of airline seats. Of course, the resident and visitor satisfaction need to be monitored. But one of the most important and key element in this strategy is that we agreed to limit the number of tourists to 1 tourist per inhabitant by 2027, until 2027. That announcement has actually gone around the world and was quite popular with the media, and allowed us to explain all our strategy. So that's all very good. We have a vision, but where do we start? So to be very honest, since we're not specialists in this field, we made some research and found out that the international reference organization in terms of sustainable tourism is undoubtedly the Global Sustainable Tourism Council, GSTC, who developed detailed sustainable criteria for destinations, for hotels, for tour operators. So what we first started with is Tahiti Tourism Executive Team got trained to familiarize themselves to the concept, and now we have a coordinator within our own organization. You are already certainly familiar with what sustainable tourism implies, which not only consider environmental aspect, but also the preservation and promotion of the culture, which is very important in French Polynesia. And of course, all the positive effects in social and economic terms for the communities. But it is essential that all of these factors, all of these actions are coordinated at the country level through a management structure, which is the 4th pillar and the most important one. So that's why we have created a sustainable committee, and this committee is a small working group, which is composed by someone from the Minister of Tourism, from the Tourism Authority, Tahiti Tourism, myself, someone from the Energy, Environment, Culture, Socio-Economic, and ADEME. ADEME is the French National Agency for Environment and Energy Management Control. So the missions of this committee that is just been formed is to define and implement the Sustainable Tourism Action Plan. It is to monitor actions and objectives and indicators related to sustainable tourism, to promote sustainable tourism measures to the authorities, to promote sustainable tourism to the tourism sector and the population, and of course, to communicate with all our actions. But before being able to write down an action plan, which is actually a huge task, by the way, we need to do a destination assessment to find out where we stand, what do we do well, what do we need to improve, right? So for that, we need to use the GSTC criteria again for sustainable tourism, but also take into account the specific needs and requests that were expressed during the construction of our strategy by the population and the tourism stakeholders. And all this process will probably be supported by an organization like GSTC or EarthCheck to help us putting up an overall action plan, again, which is again a huge task on a destination level. So when this overall action plan is defined, we need to deploy it throughout the industry. And in order to be efficient, we need to spread the task to subcommittees, which will adapt the overall action plan to their branch, who have specific issues and needs. For example, airlines have specific needs and issues, travel agencies, activities and tour operators, and of course, all accommodation types, as well as cruise and charters. And all of this will lead to, individual or branch action plan, if you want, although it's all the same basis. But it's important that we specify that all the specific action plan. And what is important is that everyone sort of come up with short, medium, and long-term objectives, as we of course realize that there's no way we can achieve everything in a short time. We need to be realistic. Now, this is the in terms of timing, we hope to achieve these fundamental steps by the end of 2023. And in the meantime, we have already started to engage a lot of actions, and we have engaged particularly on a substantial awareness campaign and training campaign, starting with tourism stakeholders and tourism officials. We brought a trainer from GSTC who was invited as a speaker to our annual conference, where we regrouped 150 most important tourism professionals every year. He also made a presentation during a tourism exchange, what we call Palau Tahiti, an event where we invite the main wholesalers of all destination source market, so that the people selling the islands of Tahiti understand our new strategy and what kind of tourism we want to move forward. He did training session as well to the 23 Island Tourism Bureau, which are spread all over French Polynesia, as well as to all of our staff, of course, and the tourism authorities and the ministry. In addition to the professional, this awareness campaign, was also extended to the population with video clips, interviews of key stakeholders and influential people, which was broadcasted on TV and in social media. Now, I'm not going to show that an extract of this video. You will, I guess, have our deck distributed for those who want, and therefore you can always look at the link and have a look at it for yourself. We also developed internally, actually, a series of animated, very short videos to illustrate concrete examples of best practices. For the time being, we have prepared 15 episodes. Each episode is broadcasted for a week, every day, throughout the year, both on local TV, the two channels, and before and after the news, all in French and in Tahitian. Maybe you could show this very short video. Good noon.
Yaurana, ensemble agissons pour un tourisme durable. Comment le tourisme contribue à la préservation de notre Whenua? L'environnement naturel de Tahiti et ses îles est un atout majeur. Les acteurs du tourisme peuvent le préserver en encourageant des comportements responsables de la part des visiteurs et de la population locale, en adhérant à des labels locaux ou internationaux reconnus pour la protection de l'environnement, en favorisant l'utilisation des énergies renouvelables et les alternatives durables, en soutenant des pratiques traditionnelles durables telles que le rahui. Ensemble, agissons pour un tourisme durable. F'arir Amanihini, l'accueil qui nous ressemble et nous rassemble. Retrouvez plus d'informations sur tahititourisme.org.
All right, let me share my screen again. There we go. All right. In parallel, what we did is we have a team going on site on each touristic island to spread the word to the local Visitors Bureau Association of tourism stakeholders, the municipality team, the local population, to explain our strategy and train them so that they can be a relay for us in that strategy deployment. We even used a sustainable ambassador who is Mr. Tahiti 2022 to attract more people to these meetings. This is and to give you an idea on how big is our task is that this is a map of French Polynesia that we have superimposed on the map of Europe on the same scale. So you can see how big our territory is and the distance that we have to cover to meet and explain our strategy to all these 23 islands that are touristic islands, right? We will also be using free online Green Flow sustainable training courses for guest houses, small hotels, and activity stakeholders provided by Atout France. Atout France is the French DMO with whom we collaborate. We have also put together a press kit listing all the initiatives in sustainable tourism from the private sector and the public sector as well, which is a great tool for communication with the media. And of course, we are starting to update all our website with this topic, which become more and more demanded by the visitors. We have, for example, 10 tips or recommendation to travelers to French Polynesia to follow a sustainable stay. I mean, so that they can have a sustainable stay. Other ongoing actions coming up soon. We have a study on our destination tourism carbon footprint. This is again a major initiative supported by the Ministry of Tourism and the French National Agency for the Environment and Energy, who will allow us to measure our footprint, our carbon footprint, and list a series of recommended action to reduce them. A survey on the population sentiment versus tourism, and of course, a visitor's satisfaction survey for visitors will need to be developed and monitored every year, which will determine if and when and how we should further develop in the future. And we are also preparing a video clip on sustainable travel that will be broadcasted on each airplane before landing to Tahiti, so that the visitors can be made aware of our philosophy. That's what I can tell you in 10 minutes about Tahiti Tourism Sustainable Program.
Thank you so much, Jean-Marc, for that presentation and taking on the challenge and being able to present to us within 10 minutes. So now we're going to move on to the panel discussion, where we will have our Sustainability and Social Responsibility Program Head from PADA, Mr. Bhavnesh Kumar, to do the moderation of this panel discussion. So I want to invite all three of our speakers back. Jean-Marc, Kadoi, Yang Li, great. And Bhavnesh, over to you.
Thanks, Ali. Thanks very much. Hi, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the session so far. I was really excited to hear all about these different destinations and what efforts they have been putting forward with regards to development of sustainable tourism. And it has been a fascinating and learning experience so far. But now is the time to ask some questions. So we will have about 3 to 4 questions for each of our speakers today. We will be starting with Mr. Yang. So Yang, first question for you is, in your different context from your fellow speakers, what are some of the most pressing sustainability issues facing Pacific tourism today?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I think, a lot of the, I think, of my answer dovetails quite well with the survey results that we obtained, right? I think there is a desire to look at how the tourism dollars that consumers are spending are actually remaining in the destinations that they're visiting, right? I think there is, I wouldn't call it a backlash, but I think there is more caution around, the idea of giving a lot of money to global brands that actually pull that money, back to their HQ and not actually reinvest it back in the community. So this is a factor that we've seen grow and grow year on year within the sustainable travel survey that we do. Which is an interesting factoid, I think, especially for destinations to consider when considering increasing hotel supply. And I think this is also a reason why there's a growing trend of alternative accommodation as well, particularly in what they call the short-term stay sector, right, or popularized by Airbnb type properties. So that's one pretty big rising concern, you could say. The other one is really a concern is understanding and finding sustainable options. So I think Jean-Marc and Kadoi both alluded to this. There is certifications that are globally recognized, particularly GSTC, but the issue is we have a lot of competing certifications as well. Some which are relegated to the built environment, for example, the LEED certification. There's other certifications that are actually created by destinations themselves, which follow the UN SDG criteria. Yeah. So the consumer is sometimes asking, well, what is what? What actually is making an impact, right?
And there's a lot of confusion in that area. Absolutely.
Correct. So a big question asked by consumers is, where can I find sustainable options? What do the sustainable options mean? How does that translate into real world impact? So this is something we're trying to address, as I mentioned earlier, with our partnership with the Norwegian company Choose, right? Which actually calculates the carbon emissions produced in various different modalities of transport, but also accommodations that you select. So, we're trying to do our part to try to put some kind of linearity and common,
make it more interesting
and commonality
and easy
across,
to follow, right?
Exactly.
Perfect,
so yeah,
perfect.
So I'll stop
Thank
there.
Thank you so much, Yang. So now for our next speaker, Mr. Kadoi, I have the same question for you, but in your context. So what do you believe are some of the most pressing sustainability issues facing Pacific tourism today?
Well, thank you, moderator. I think I kind of stressed them out in my presentation for Palau and also the Pacific. I think it's climate change. Because Palau, like other Pacific nations, we are very susceptible to high tides. I kind of briefly mentioned about the Southern Lagoon, the rock islands of Palau. Some of the famous beaches are no longer in existence due to climate change. And that poses a danger to one, the marine animals. Number two is the management. Now, if there's not a lot of beaches, then that tends to create management issues on where to really bring the tourists to. That's another issue that we're faced with. Another issue is really the education and awareness and raising that within the community. Sometimes we talk about the talk, but we don't really walk it. So I tend to say, let's practice and let's really walk the practice, not just talking about sustainability. We need to work together, not in silos, but if we work together as a community, stakeholders, the national and state governments, I think we can address those sustainability issues.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Kadoi. And you voiced out a rather grave issue that the nation of Palau is facing, right? The climate change is right upon us, and it's not something that we need to fear for the future. It's happening right now for Palau.
Yeah.
So our next speaker, Jean-Marc, we have the same question for you, but with a slight twist, because Mr. Kadoi added that there is a lot of collaboration required from various stakeholders. So the question for you is the most pressing sustainability issues that Asia Pacific or Pacific tourism is facing today, and how various stakeholders can better collaborate to promote sustainability.
Well, they do a lot in a sense that they have already some initiatives that are quite exceptional, so that we promote. I mean, I can give you an example of what we call the SWAC, which is the seawater air conditioning system, deep sea water air conditioning system, which makes the use of deep sea water to air conditioning building. The system is possible in French Polynesia. Maybe I could share you a little thing on the screen, a little diagram so you can understand better.
Sure.
You're right. The system is made possible in French Polynesia because our reefs are very close to the islands and therefore to the inhabitant and to the hotels. So the principle is that you put a pipe between your hotel and the reef, and then you have this pipe go down the deep sea to up to 2,000 meters, where the water is about 6 degrees centigrade. And then with a very little pump, you bring this water up to an exchanger on the surface, and which is going to cool the air conditioning circuit of the hotel before it's being rejected back to the lagoon. It seems pretty simple like that. There's no pollution, hardly any energy or being used, and humongous savings. I mean, this has been implemented in the Intercontinental Bora Bora in 2006. Then the second one was at the Brando, which is quite a well-known hotel. And now the community has benefited from it because the main island hospital, Tahiti hospital, main hospital has used the same technology, and we are having now we're using the SWAC system to air condition the whole hospital, and this is saving hundreds of millions to the community,
and also saving the environment at the same time. Right?
Absolutely, right.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jean-Marc. So it got me wondering. So for technology has a bigger role to play than people usually realize, especially in terms of achieving sustainability goals. And with that, I would like to go back to Yang. So the question for you, Yang, is how can technology help in achieving sustainability goals in Pacific tourism sector? I know your company Booking.com is already doing a lot of development in technological sector, especially with regards to sustainability. But it's always good to know what are your thoughts about, something that goes beyond the domain of booking stays.
Yeah, I think what's difficult about the travel sector, right, is that it's not a physical product. It's one of the difficulties of applying a technological solution sometimes, because what's sustainable in one destination is different in another destination. How people get to one destination varies with other destinations. So
absolutely,
how to calculate impact in such a varied space is extremely difficult, which is why I say, for Booking, we have to manage, and what we try to leverage technology is the part in which we play, right, in the booking space. And we see ourselves primarily as an information exchange portal, right? So how can we present the clearest, most accurate information at the right time within the booking process for consumers so that they make more sustainable choices? That is where we believe we can play and make an impact. And it's up to guys like Jean-Marc and Kadoi to work with us in sharing information so that we can display it properly on the platform. So that is, and of course, when you ask how do we go beyond bookings, so I think we are continually looking at where else we can showcase sustainable sustainability information beyond accommodation, right? This is why we're incorporating things like flights, rental cars, and other types of things. So, there's more to come.
Leveraging heavy on the technology to make sure that audience are well informed when they make their choices.
Exactly.
Great, amazing effort. So that brings upon a question that the whole idea of informing the audience, right, or the tourist to make sure they make sustainable choices. And from from Palau, Mr. Kadoi mentioned a lot of initiatives that they are doing. So the next question to you, Mr. Kadoi, is when you mentioned about the tourist pledge, right? So tourists arrive, they have to sign a pledge. What is the feedback of these initiatives from the tourist?
Well, just to share a little bit about that, I just checked the website. There's about 802,000 people that have signed the pledge. So that's a testament that they are for it. And I know time is about to end, but I just want to share that a lot of island destinations have followed Palau's footsteps and also creating their own pledge. So just last month, Hawaii did their keiki pledge, and they invited our president and our minister of tourism to go to that event. So and in Palau, a lot of children and people have adopted it. The pledge has spun out a different programs. So now we're doing the business pledge, where businesses will take the pledge. And then when visitors come, they are endorsing the pledge to them. They are talking about tread lightly, please follow the cultural ways, respect cultural initiatives and practices while in Palau. And the pledge really was drafted by the children of Palau. They were looking at all the issues and challenges that Palau was facing. So a team of a few people came together with the government and did the Palau pledge. So it's really from the heart. It's from the children of Palau.
It's from the heart.
Yeah. And that's how
Perfect.
we Pacific Islanders do. We need to do things. We cannot just say it. It has to come from the heart. Because
Perfect.
from the heart, it means a lot. And it's very genuine.
Indeed, indeed. It's a genuine effort from the kids of Palau.
Yes.
Which brings us to our speaker, Jean-Marc. And from this entire discussion, we have established a number of things. And the question that pops up in my mind now is, we have spoken about sustainability initiatives, we have spoken about stakeholder engagement, collaboration. So my question to you, Jean-Marc, is, when we are doing all these kind of collaboration, are we having any sort of specific strategy to manage over-tourism? Like, are we keeping a cap on how many tourists can arrive in Tahiti, or there is some other way that you, or some other measure that you're taking into consideration?
So I just put my mic back. Like I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, we have put a cap of 1 tourist per inhabitant. In other words, 280,000 maximum tourists by the end of 2027. And that was a huge move to be accepted by the government. As you all realize, most of the government would go for incredible numbers of increases in tourism, because it shows they're doing a good job. So we really had to convince the government to say, look, this is not the right way to go anymore. COVID has come around us for 2 or 3 years now, and we need to really go towards a more responsible growth. And they finally accepted. So the way we do it, I mean, at the moment, it's not that complicated, because we were doing 235,000 tourists as a record year. That means we have 5% increase per year until 2027 that we can do. All the hotels currently are practically full, and therefore, what do we have left is to push people to travel during low season, like Yang Li was mentioning earlier. So that only that already since 2022, we have seen our low season reduced by from 5 to 3 months, not even 3 months, 2.5 months. So not building any hotels, we managed to increase already, and we're going to definitely be over 2019 figures in 2023. And then, of course, the government has a series of projects that they have accepted for the next couple of years, so they can maintain, they can control the growth. Yeah.
Perfect. That's a wonderful initiative, because as a destination, it's always challenging to make that choice. Do we need more tourists or we need more quality tourists? And to put a cap, that's a tough decision, a tough call, but I like the way it has been managed, being very thoughtful, not just about the environment, but also about the tourist influx and the kind of impact they bring on the resources, right? So 100%
what
of the population.
I could add, I'm sorry, is that we have so many islands with huge potential. So one of the main decision as well was not to stop developing the main islands like Bora Bora, Morea, etc. That everyone, the rest of the world know, but to try to develop other islands that have as much beauty and potential than the regular ones.
Diversifying the tourism offering. Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. So thank you so much, Jean-Marc, for your response, and to Mr. Kadoi, to Mr. Yang for all these questions and for the wonderful presentation. That marks the end of our panel discussion. Over to you, Ali.
Thank you so much, Pavnesh, and thank you to our three presenters for amazing presentations and a panel discussion. We've come to the section of our webinar right now where we will have our closing keynote speech by Kun Tavida Kamolvej. So Associate Professor Tavida is a renowned expert in the field of disaster and risk management, public policy analysis, and design strategic management, as well as social science research studies. She has served as a disaster risk management expert to Japan International Cooperation Agency, UNESCO, and UNICEF. And she has also been involved in various advisory roles within the Thai government, including the National Disaster Prevention and Mitigation Committee and the Subcommittee on Earthquake and Tsunami Prevention and Solution. So very, very, very warm welcome to Kun Tavida to come on board for our closing keynote speech. Her dedication and expertise at the end of the day have made such a positive impact on the community she serves. I can't wait to hear what she has to share with us today. So Kun Tavida, I want to invite you to unmute yourself, turn on your camera, share your screen, and let's start the closing keynote speech.
Thank you very much. Could the host allow me to share?
Yes, one moment, please. This is crucial.
By the way, waiting for that. Good morning, good afternoon, and almost good night for everyone in the conference, in the meeting webinar today. Thank you very much for inviting me, first of all. And I would try to both summarize what we actually trying to pinpoint today, as well as making my remarks in terms of making coastal cities sustainable, as well as if opportunity allows, I may actually bring you to the other side of the coastal area, which is in the Andaman Sea, which is located with the Southeast Asian part. So it might not as beautiful as the other islands that we actually been hearing about, but I'm sure that we have our own attraction. And perhaps the lesson learned from this part is also attractive enough that sometimes, first of all, when we begin with the talk on learning, the lesson learned, I practically believe that the tourists also want to learn, want to actually feel, empathize, and feel the feeling of what the coastal life would be. So I think when the city also have a lesson learned, when the city is also built upon their acknowledgement of history, their present day, and whatever the future will actually lie upon, I think that would make it very attractive in terms of tourism as well. So by far, let me start.
Yes, I think you can share your screen now.
Okay, I can now.
Perfect.
You can see it. Okay, let me make it full screen one bit. Okay, and as a closing remark, I have about not actually more than 15 minutes to close this up. So let me actually make my point in terms of, we've been hearing a lot of sustainable development, sustainabilities, and all the tourism, trusted tourism, and those of the new way. Let's say it used to be a new norm before, but it's supposedly now, so they have to be established as the norm of having a tourism, both the last phrase of Pavnesh has really interested me. Whether we want more of the volume of the tourists or we want a quality of a tourism, how it does somehow mingle together and go along together. So let me also answer that through my presentation. And I also, if I can, would like to also answer the last question that Pavnesh put to the other presenters today of what is the most challenges for the island nowadays, and also how smart is enough? Being a smart city or smart tourism, I would actually might touch upon that point as well. I think all the coastal islands around the world, basically, having their own vibrance. However, in order to mentioning of those vibrance of island city, I think one of the most important thing is not only a tourism. The tourism, of course, all of the island is actually seem to be that way. But some part of the world, those islands has their own unique, natural, and authentic way of presenting what culture, what vibrant, and what lesson they're passing through. One of the most interesting thing that I learned from all of the island, not only in Thailand, though, by the way, all of the island that I have experience on, of course, also Hawaii, because I was actually practically doing the work over there. I learned that when we have a storytelling of those areas the tourist is coming from, it doesn't matter. That lesson is a high-end modernization of technology, of those beautiful creation, those kind of things. But the other part of it, people are still attracted to nature, attracted to their authentic life, what it actually is a local brand product, and what exactly is a lifestyle of each of the islands it actually presenting. So by far, I think a lot of the island own their own attraction. In the Andaman Sea, of course, for Thailand, for instance, I'm from Thailand, so let me brag about it a little bit. So in terms of that, we have most vibrant of Asia, I guess, because talking about history, oh my God, the history of the diversity in the southern part of Thailand is really enormous because it's a combination of the international culture. It's a combination of all of the tourists that actually come and reside a very long time in the area. So we kind of having a mix, a very good mix though, by the way, is all of the variety of the culture that you can see. All the view, all the nature touch, I believe in my own truthness that we also own one of the most beautiful kind of beach and then clean water. For the past 3 years, COVID is actually have taught a lot of things to the coastal area. We suddenly, after having enormous number of tourists, you kind of kill the color off all the sea and the water, the island around the world. 3 years it has been rested. We learn that the nature give us back clear water. We can see all of the aquarium. We can see all of the aquaculture. And we can see a lot of things through those nature-based kind of solution. Last but not least, of course, when you're talking about tourism coming in, the life of it, the nightlife, the light, and also all of the culture. We used to have that vibrant before, and we still do. However, all the island facing climate change as of all the presenters presenting. And what is the most challenging here? I think it's not awareing of a climate change. I believe the climate change, climate adaptation, climate mitigation has been rooted already all around the world. I believe in human being on that part. I think they're aware of it. But one of the most challenging thing, which Pavet's also asking about, is that how can you streamline making people think that climate reaction, climate action is not that difficult. You are talking of those trash collection. You are talking about carbon neutrality. You are talking about air conditioning. You're talking about everything. But somehow, how can we design this and emerge it into a lifestyle? A lot of the local people is still somehow, because we have a diversity in the island. You have people who struggle from poverty. You have people who actually in the tourism business, in the service, and you have a lot of people working on some sector else. How can them actually come together having a mutual benefit of earning from the climate action through the tourism, which is one of the main income of all the island. So basically, it's the difficult thing, I think it's that part, how to make it comply well together, to make them think that climate action is not that difficult. And the climate action has been designed deeply into everyday life of the island. It doesn't matter how much of the lesson learned you've been through. Southern Thailand have been confronted with tsunami, you guys know that. And also flood, a big one. This is somehow impacted from La Nina that we actually have, and also the COVID. What turned us in terms of all the island around the world and all the presenters have been presenting, that we bouncing back. We put the early warning system in. When we talk technology, let me somehow refer to quote my governor, Bangkok governor. He always said that smart city is fine. However, enough smart is actually better because you cannot make the city outsmart the people. Smart city means smart people and smart living. Smart city doesn't mean technological city. It doesn't mean automation city. You leave a lot of people behind. We are getting into aging society. Right now, Thailand has facing about 22 to 30% of the elders walking around. So basically, you were talking about scaring them by using too much of the technology and lose the human touch. I think when we bounce back, we're realizing the use of technology in every island that actually facing with climate action, climate change, as well as a disaster. We put a safety system in. We try to actually make sure that we actually surviving and we actually somehow recover from this disaster that we learn from the effect of the climate change. We even actually put a lot of concept of resilience. So we believe that if we can come back, making it safer tourism, I think if you haven't defined a tourist right now to me, first, safety tourism, of course. When you talk safety tourism, the twin words that I think I'm going to put on is trusted tourism, and that leads to trusted economy. Basically, people coming back and want to be sure to safety per se. Early warning system is in, all those structure that actually stronger is in, all the knowledge, all the awareness, especially a community network. In the south of Thailand, for instance, it has been known a very strong community down there. With the help of a lot of stakeholders, private sector, of course, tourism sector is one of the most strongest somehow network in the southern part of Thailand. All together with the public sector and the hotel sector, tourism sector, and also a local community that learn a lot from the disaster in the past, that only coming together, designing the new phase tourism and service so that we can come back together. What you see from the screen right now is the coming back after, of course, tsunami, a flood, and COVID-19. We even have Phuket Sandbox. I think Phuket Sandbox is one of the first of the sandbox in terms of tourism, even in the region. So people can actually have bubble seal kind of tourism, or actually a small part of group of the people that can come back and start a living after a new normal that we see. And being as a hub of connectivity had urged us as well to actually working this connectivity not only for the southern part of Thailand. We also pay attention to connecting all the dots around the area as a neighboring city. Last but not the least, I think what actually make it fun for the tourists at this moment, I think we are entering the world of social network, as well as the big data and informative kind of somehow campaign tourism. In order, a lot of people, especially the new generation, that follow the opinion, right? They follow that all the data sharing, how much of the data we can push and make the tourists actually understand where they are going, making their choice accordingly, and somehow learn before they go what kind of package of the tourists they want to go. Would they like to go to only like high-end technological kind of tourism, using all of the data, starting from what? Searching for the information of what kind of route of the tourism they want. And whether they want to visit smart pier, smart navigation that each of the countries have or island have, they can do so. They can also pick the package of cultural kind of event, cultural kind of heritage, so that they can make a visit. Or they can go to what Thailand been actually calling like ecosystem, kind of a little bit of reservation, kind of that kind of tourist, so that people can touch upon what exactly the nature-built tourism it actually offers. We actually been starting on making a smart city in the southern part of Thailand, especially you guys might know Phuket as a pearl of Andaman Sea. So with that part, a lot of data and technology also being used as a collective action from the community. So basically you are not leaving the technology and big data of the tourism sector alone as people of the young generation can use. You're trying to design to actually make the data available for all of the group of the people. One thing that I learned that is really good is this connectivity of the tourism in the modern world. I think first, the connectivity should be logistic. The connectivity should be technology, yes, I accept. The technology should be able to be inclusiveness. So basically bring a lot of different people in a different skill and a different accessibility to the technology to actually be able to make their life connect to one another and show that to the world and to the tourists. And also there had to be a connection between neighboring kind of area, not only just standalone island. I think of what one of the presenters talking about making people also traveling in a low season. I think that share a lot, because if you can make a variety of a connectivity of the tourism of island and then the mainland, I think the storytelling attract the tourism even more. Last but not the least, I think we can't deny, even if this is a tourism kind of business, even if this is a visiting kind of area. However, to make the destination a livable city, that's what actually speaks for itself. If the island is livable for everyone inclusively and also beautifully and being nature tight and being able to communicate to the world that the most attraction of each of the country as an island is actually speak as a correspond to the impact of the climate change, and trying to make the tourism is actually well respected in the terms of we actually make the tourism respond to the world as well and keep us actually have a livable world, I guess, at the very end. So that would be all that I shared today. And I hope that my closing is right on time for 15 minutes. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kun Tavida. That was such an excellent presentation to really showcase how an island destination in Southeast Asia and in the Andaman Sea can really contribute as well to all the issues that we've discussed today. Thank you so much for your closing keynote speech. It was absolutely lovely to be able to hear from yourself as well as all the rest of our speakers today. So I'm just going to do a quick wrap up of our webinar right now. And I wanted to start by thanking our speakers, our members, but especially our sponsor of today's webinar, the Thailand Convention and Exhibition Bureau, TCEP, for supporting PATA members in the Pacific today. So I just wanted to share with the audience as well some of the other initiatives that PATA is doing and is rolling out. Next slide, please. We do have the PATA Gold Awards, which has been running since 1984. Palau Visitors Authority, Mr. Kadoi, did mention this in his presentation. And this PATA Gold Awards is an industry award to honor celebrating excellence in Pacific Asia travel and tourism. It is proudly sponsored by the Macau Government Tourism Office, and we want to sincerely thank them for their support. The PATA Gold Awards is up and running, and you can submit any applications that you have of your sustainable initiatives or marketing initiatives. The deadline is the end of this month on May 31st. So please, if you have anything that you want to, you've already done the good work, you might as well also receive recognition for it within the industry. Do scan the QR code or visit our website or email us at goawards@pata.org for more information. Next up, I also want to share with you about the PATA Face of the Future Awards. Once again, also super in line with this idea of being able to support the next generation of future leaders in the tourism industry. The Pata Face of the Future Award seeks to identify and reward a rising star in our industry that has exhibited initiative and leadership in the advancement of tourism, as well as demonstrating commitment to the sustainable development of the travel industry in line with PATA's mission. The call for entries has just begun. Just yesterday, May 15th, sorry, not yesterday, 2 days ago, May 15th. The submission deadline is July 15th. Our winner announcement is scheduled for early September, and the award will be presented at the Pata Travel Mart 2023 happening in New Delhi, India. Which brings me to the next topic. Our in-person events happening this year. So we have the Pata Annual Summit and Adventure Mart 2023 happening very, very soon in about 2 weeks' time in Pokhara, Nepal. Please do join us for a very exciting thought leadership conference on adventure tourism, as well as seller and exhibition opportunities that we have here. We also have the Pata Destination Experience Forum and Mart happening in Sarawak, Malaysia, June 21st to 23. So at the end of the month in June. This is going to be an excellent event happening in person, where you get to actually experience firsthand for yourself the destination through tailored destination experiences. There are 3 destination experiences to choose from, ranging from wildlife conservation and community-based tourism, where you get to see orang-utans, all the way to the ecotourism route, where you get to see the Wind and Fairy Cave and Nature Reserve, as well as a gastro-tourism route, where you can experience the flavors of Sarawak. I'm so excited for this event, and I hope to see each and every one of you there. The Pata Travel Mart, as I mentioned before, is happening in October, 4th to 6th October this year, New Delhi, India. This event focuses on mainstream travel products, and it's very important for stakeholders who wish to do business at scales with global buyers and the Indian outbound market or the India travel industry service providers. As we all know, India is a key target market for many outbound businesses post-pandemic, so please do consider being a seller with an exhibition booth to do B2B trade meetings here at this event. Last but not least, we do have a youth symposium happening at our Pata Annual Summit in Nepal. So all youths and students of tourism and travel, you are invited to come and attend this event. We do have special rates for student delegates. So please do scan the QR code, check out our website, and let us know if you're going to join us in Nepal for this youth symposium. At the end of the day, human capital development is a huge passion of mine and of Pata's, and we are here to support the future travel leaders in tourism. Next slide, please. Okay, so that is it for today, and thank you very much for joining us for today's webinar. Once again, thank you so much to our speakers, our presenters, our closing keynote speech speaker, Kun Tavida. Thank you so much to our sponsor, TSET, for this webinar. And thank you to the entire Pata International community who has made this possible. So with that, without further ado, have a lovely rest of the day to everyone, and goodbye.